Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's Fireside Chat. I'm delighted today to be joined by Nasir Sobhani, also known as the Streets Barber. He has earned his affectionate title, spending his time taking to Melbourne streets, offering free haircuts and shaves to the homeless and less fortunate. His inspirational story of compassion and generosity has received significant attention globally. Nasir was one of the 5 people to be profiled as part of the Kenneth Cole Courageous Class campaign in New York, celebrating individuals who have overcome obstacles in life to become inspiring role models. Nasir was born into one of the few Iranian families living in Japan at the time before his family moved to Canada. Later in life, he struggled and overcame drug addiction through his supportive family and friends. He pursued his true passion in barbering and achieved a name for himself in the barbering community. Following his newfound path in life, he started afresh in Melbourne 4 years ago. Nasir's central principles, which he encompasses in all that he strives to do, are the oneness of humanity, combating prejudice and social injustice, and the need for compassion for all. Strongly spiritual, he believes in using your talents to be charitable and help those less privileged regardless of their backgrounds. Despite our different religious and spiritual beliefs, he exemplifies the notion that ultimately we are all one. A very warm welcome.
Thank you so much.
That's okay. It's so nice to be talking to you today. So
Yes.
let's maybe just sort of go back to the very beginning and just talk to me about your family and the fact that you were Iranians living in Japan and then the move to Canada. What was your father doing at the time?
Well, stepping back before Japan, actually, my father left Iran in his teens in an effort to serve the community worldwide. That
Okay.
was he would always tell me that was like my only dream, my only hope was to become a servant for the people, And so when he was 18 years old and he finished high school, he uh, fulfilled that dream and just started on his way. And my mother, shortly after, I think her 18th birthday as well, did the same thing. Um, and both of them actually went to the Philippines, but at different times.
Okay.
That's just where they ended up. And they were, my dad was in the north, my mom was in the south, uh, serving their communities in their own way. And my father had actually left the Philippines and went to Japan and decided to start a business there and embrace another culture, another community, and embrace another group of people and serve them to his fullest. And by doing that, he was able to establish a business. And after 2 years, he decided to go back to the Philippines to say hi to his friends that he met in the Philippines, and he met my mother there actually. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, they fell in love, and they both decided to, you know, uh, further that relationship and get married and move to Japan with my mother moved to Japan with my father. And so, um, 25 years later, they both lived there. Um, and me and my brothers were all born there. And we eventually moved to Canada when I was about 7 years old. So I was, I would say I spent my childhood in Japan, but then my youth in Canada. But when you're saying what's it like and why were we there, I think it goes down to just the Baha'i faith, which is the faith that my family, is part of. And the fundamental purpose of the Baha'i faith is to serve humanity, regardless of your creed, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, etc. Just embrace one another. Like you said, we are all one. And it's really good and encouraged to go to other cultures and communities that are different from your own so you can actually really embrace what may be different but accept it as your own. And so my whole family, forget my mother and father for a second, did the same thing as well. So we have such a diverse family from all parts of the world. um, and most of them actually at right after the revolution in Iran went to the the west part of Africa,
Right.
in different countries in West Africa. But that's just, a number of them, not everyone. So then we got the rest going to the Caribbean, South America, Asia, Europe, etc. So it's pretty cool. Like when you're saying what's it like, it just seemed normal for me to be someone who was from a different country, when I go to family reunions, because no one was the same, although we were all Persian, ethnically, we're all different, speaking different languages, different cultures, and those are the coolest family reunions, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So
And
important too.
so it was normal for me, and I just didn't know anything else but it. And it wasn't like, oh, we're Persian, but they're Japanese. It was like, hey, man, we're from Japan. That's how we used to say it. So it just seemed normal for me. And yeah, I guess that's just how I see it. I'm really grateful that I had that as like a intro into my life, because it really allowed me to not really look at skin color or culture or language or anything like that and like be like, oh, you're different. It's kind of like, hey, you're kind of interesting. What are you? I want to be like you too, So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, based on sort of the foundations of, what your parents taught you when you were little, what were your ambitions? What did you in your own mind think that you wanted to do? Like obviously to be in service, but did you sort of have any idea of what that might look like back then?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. I try to lead to this in my talks a lot, but it's mostly like the fact that because my family growing up from all around, I mean, growing up and having family that was from all around the world, they were doing phenomenal things, and they were really excelling in their industry and their paths and their careers, um, and were able to do such, positives within the communities they were serving in. So I come from a family of doctors and CEOs and several UN officials, United Nations, right? So um, having that, in the back of my mind, thinking that's what I had to do, was instilled into I think, my ideology of this is who I need to become. But my family's doing this, I need to do that. Mind you, my family never once told me I had to do that. They never actually said it either, like verbally or even hinted towards, you need to become a doctor, you need to become a scientist, you need to become a CEO. um, so it was just what I perceived and how I took everything on board. um, and it was cool because they weren't just doctors who were just working at a clinic, not that there's anything wrong with that, but they were doctors serving massive communities, who really needed it, or being personal physicians to very important people, or there were diplomats in like third world developing countries and really doing their efforts. So it wasn't they were just doing their career, but they were doing it, but like on another level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like signing up for like Netflix premium. You can get Netflix or you can get the premium version where, you know what I mean? And that's what they were. They were doing whatever they were, but on a premium style. So yeah, it just kind of led me to have this almost this false reality of, a doctor is not just a doctor, but a doctor has to be this kind of doctor. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it really affected, I think, my upbringing, because I would try to do stuff, even in school, I would get a mark. Let's just say, an A. The fact that it wasn't an A plus made me feel like I failed,
Right.
right? Because of that premium like thinking process I instilled within myself. Was got to do it. And my brothers, both of them, they were on the premium level. I'm the youngest of three boys. So
Right. Okay.
my oldest brother, he was always gifted when it came to academia. Yeah, absolutely. And my other brother, he was just gifted in sports and academia as well. So both of them, like, I could be the captain of my basketball team, but if I didn't score, if I didn't get the team to the playoffs, then I was like, oh man, I failed. I'm not like my brothers. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I do.
deep rooted insecurities and false realities of, of self growing up, because my idea of perfection was so skewed and so unrealistic.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You sort of have these two brothers that you really looked up to, and because of that, it sort of, yeah, really sort of frames in your own mind who you think you should be, but it's not actually at all a reality, is it?
No, exactly, it's not a reality. And that's the thing, right? Like whatever they would do, I would try to do as well, but that wasn't my path. That wasn't who I am. That was not my purpose, right? And
Yeah,
so for me to try to be like them so much, um, made me go further and further away from who I really am.
yeah,
Because when you're trying to be someone you're not, you start to lose yourself.
yeah,
It's as simple as that. And that's what I did. I'm not saying academia is not something I love or I'm not good at, but I think I'm more on the artistic side. As you can see, I've got tattoos all over my face, on my hands. It's just how I am. It's just
yeah.
I
You are.
I gravitate more so towards that style. But before, when I was a kid, I wouldn't let myself be who I was. I was trying to be so much like someone I wasn't, and that's where I just felt like just a huge imbalance and instability within my own personal character.
And do you think that that sort of led you down the path of addiction, and sort of is the reason why you turned to smoking weed and then, heavier
Absolutely.
drugs?
Absolutely. I think there's a really, really, really false um, belief in how you've been raised. Because if that's the case with every single person, now I'm not saying that's not the case, you know, most of the time or even some of the time, but when people turn to, oh, it's how your parents raised you or it's your family house, then I'm a living example of that's not true.
Yeah,
I grew up in a family where alcohol, even a wine, wasn't even introduced,
yeah, right.
not even a cigarette. Nobody in my family ever suffered from addiction nor use a substance. It's against the Baha'i faith to alter your state of mind, actually,
Hmm.
from your true sense of self. Um, so trying to be the most natural sense of self you could be is like it's a what's the word? It's forbidden to not be your natural sense of self is what I'm trying to get at.
Hmm.
So growing up with that, never being in my household, and my family, very functioning, very positive, very spiritual, very loving, not not strict and like crazy either, where it's like you've got to do this or you're going to hell. No way. It was like, we love you so much. You made a mistake. Let's work on it. What can we do? So I had all this positivity growing up. So I wouldn't even blame anything to do with my family or my brothers or my parents or my family home. It was all within myself, a feeling this insecurity that I put on myself. And so, for so many years of my life, I never did anything. But the older I got, so towards the end of high school, was when I started just feeling like I failed constantly. Um, and one day I just kind of got introduced to marijuana, and for many years I was always introduced to it, but I never said yes to it. But then one day I was like, whatever. And when I got high, I felt like it's funny because I mean, anyone can get high, right? But for
Hmm.
me, smoking a joint for the very first time, I felt like I was the high. I was higher than anyone who's ever been high. Like
Yeah, right.
and I was like, whoa, okay. And I was like, this is something that I'm good at. You know what I mean? I can finally get high. And like the fact that no one did it in my family made me feel like special, because then I
Yeah,
was like, this is something that I can take now. I can do, and I can do it well. Because if anyone knew how high I got, you know what I mean? I was so naive, but and so like I started trying to act like that was my thing now, like getting high and being whatever, and it gave me a little bit of like in a weird way a false sense of confidence for the first initial part, because I was like, finally I'm good at something. You
yeah,
know what I
right.
mean? Like
Okay.
I'm good at smoking something. But
I'm
I
just
felt like
getting
at
high.
that point, very naive, very naive. But
Yeah, yeah.
but what I
How,
did was
how
I
old,
did
how old were you?
17
Yeah,
towards the end of high school.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And but the thing is, because I tried taking that as my thing, and like I tried to make that like who, like I was going to be really good at it, um, I just would do it a lot. And then when I would do it a lot, obviously there's a deep rooted um, you know sense of shame that you get from getting high when your family's not about that. Obviously society doesn't really encourage it. Well, maybe modern day a little bit, it's more acceptable, but you know 10
And
years ago, whatever.
and
Sorry.
did your family actually know at this point in time that you were
At
actually
first,
off
no.
getting high?
No, at first, no, because I was very cautious about it, like
Yeah,
thinking I was so sly. But then eventually got to a point where, like, I was getting so high all the time. And this is where I was trying to get to, was the more high I'd get, then that's the shame would come into myself. And then, because I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this because I know better, right?
yeah,
And when I would feel that shame, all I did was get more high, right?
yeah,
And
right.
so by getting more high, it was just a cycle, a toxic cycle, a relationship that I had with getting more high, feeling the shame. The only way to mask that shame was to get more high, and then I would get more high, which would lead to more shame. And the only way to mask that shame again was to get more high. And so the drugs eventually started becoming harder and harder, not even more and more, but the substance in itself were not just marijuana at that point. And eventually, after a while, once it started going progressing from marijuana to other drugs, and then the number of times I would do it, and how high I was getting, and how things just weren't working out in my life and my friends and everything else, that's when my family started to find out. And it was It wasn't a way to hide it at all. At this point, they just could see, this loving, beautiful, charismatic boy becoming this just like this dark, sad, lifeless soul, and
Yeah.
that's what drugs do to you. It really takes you away from who you are. And I see the wisdom behind why the Baha'i faith says try to keep yourself in the most natural sense, because we've been created to become future kings and queens, every single last one of us, right? So why do we want to take ourselves away from our true beauty? And like I see the beauty in it, like I don't try to encourage and force anyone to do that, but I really try to um, enable people to really see that true pure beauty that they can tap in within themselves, not feeling like they're too weak that they need to get something from something else to elevate who they really are, because everything is established within you, and everyone needs to realize that. So
And then you went on to, you actually did go on to university, and then the first year, I believe that you spent the majority of your tuition on drugs and getting high and not really studying or doing anything that was very academic.
right.
Um, and was that sort of still about sort of fitting in for you, or still trying to find your purpose and who you were?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what was sort of, what was that turning point? Because for many people that have an addiction, they never actually get to that turning point. So for you, what was the turning point?
Yeah, well, that's a really good one. So for like the university that I went to, funny enough, so I started smoking weed towards the end of grade 12, like a very, very end, basically like on my last week of high school, you know, and then that summer was just like, obviously very, very experimental. But for me, it was the university that I went to was the same university that both my brothers actually attended, which is the University of Toronto, which is the best university in Canada at the time, or top two or top three.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going because I wanted to go. I wanted to go because they went, right? But the thing is, at that point, I had already been accepted before I smoked weed, and so when I started to smoke and do, drugs, I was already accepted. I went to university, and at that point, I was like thinking, "Yo, this is something that I'm going to start doing. This is who I'm going to be." And yeah, like I said, I wanted to do it really well, and so obviously, I had my student loans and all that, which was supposed to pay for tuition and books. Instead, it just went to, you know, drugs and experiences that I don't even remember at this point. But
Mm.
um, yeah, so then I was actually kicked out of uni,
Oh,
not only
okay.
because I failed to pay at the end of the year. I also didn't even pass, I think, actually, I don't even think I passed any subject because I was barely going to school, right?
Yeah.
So that was another thing that led me to fail. And like, I was like, I'm a failure. And my family was kind of like, what the heck happened? You know?
Yeah.
And where did your money go? What's going on? So eventually it was kind of caught on. But at that point, I was like, oh, whatever. I don't really care. So I was just back home working in a cafe, just doing what I have to do. When my brothers were basically kicking goals, I was at home, staying with my mom again. Because both my brothers, we all left at such a young age, at 17, 18 years old, to go and pursue our dreams,
Yeah.
you know. And then I had to come back at like 19 and just basically be still living with my mom, which is something that my brothers never did. And so I was working at a, minimum wage job, just doing what I had to do, getting by, hanging out with no one productive. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
horrible,
Yeah.
horrible
Yeah.
influences. And over the years, it wasn't getting any better, and my family knew what was up. But my mom was just holding on to, the fact that I'm her baby, I'm her son. She was trying to do everything she could to get me back on the right path, as my dad and my brothers both did. But it got to a point where I think no one could really do anything, and even my mom, she just felt like there was nothing else left. But it's really, I'm not a mother, but I can only imagine what it's like from my mother's experience, that there's a different relationship that a mother has with her kid, especially her last born, right, where that's the baby. And so she could never, I think, um, just let me go.
Let it
And so
go. Yeah.
I'd come home from like week-long binges, 2 week-long binges, and come home to like fruit that's been cut up, prepared in the fridge for her just to go. And if like I didn't come home for a few days because I want to pick up my phone, she would force herself to eat these fruits and like so it doesn't go to waste, and just cut me up fresh ones again just so I come home and nourish myself, And
Yeah.
she would always be like, "Nas, are you okay? What can I do for you? Please, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, "Mom, just leave me alone. I'm fine. You don't even understand, blah, blah, blah," thinking I know everything. But, uh, my drug addiction had gone to a point where I was snorting a lot of cocaine. But it got to a point where the cocaine wouldn't even fit my nostrils anymore. It would just come back out because it was so stuffed with it. And so there was a book that I was reading. It was Anthony Kiedis's autobiography. He's a lead singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, and
Yeah,
it talked
yeah.
about how in the 80s, he used to do something called speedballs, which is like a mixture of coke and heroin, in a thing, and just do that. And I was like, oh, you can inject coke, like what? So yeah, sure enough, I decided to do it one night, and this is after like just losing everything at this point. And my cat, she had diabetes at the time, and I just remembered my mom had needles to put insulin into her, and so one night when she went to bed, I grabbed one of my cat's needles, and
Oh,
yeah, I just grabbed
yeah.
the coke, I mixed it with water. I didn't actually know how to do it all. I just read in the book that he used to do it, so I went onto Google and just typed in, how to inject cocaine, and there were blog after blog after blog on steps, and yeah, I just sat there one night with no wires or string or rope, so I grabbed the cable from my Xbox. I grabbed my cat's insulin needle, a spoon that my mom and I used for cereal, and
Wow.
a Google page open full of websites that give you step by steps at 4 in the morning. And you know how they say, like, how like in the movies and stuff, you see them like push out the little drops when they want to
Yeah.
put the needle into you, just to kind of get away from it, get any of the air away. I
Yeah.
didn't know that, right? So, and I was so stingy, like of like I don't want to lose any of my Coke water, so I made sure that I kept every drop or everything in there, but there was a little bit of air always in the needle. And apparently, I find out later that if the air goes into the veins, it could be lethal, right? Because then like the air will go into your brain, the air
Yeah.
bubble will pop, and whatever it is. But I guess for me, because my cat obviously is small, and so her needle was small, the pockets of air weren't as big as they would have been in a normal needle.
Yeah, right.
So, so even though I was doing that, here I am talking to you now. Like, think of the luck, you know what I mean? Like I
That's
was rushing,
amazing.
yeah, Russian roulette without even realizing that there was a
Yeah.
bullet, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, here I am, talking to you about something that was so, once again, like I said, I was very naive. I didn't really grow up with any of this. And that was a turning point for me. When I did that the next day, I went to go grab some, well, I was on my way to go get some more drugs after, just a night of injecting. And my mom, she gave me a little bit of money because I was like almost threatening her basically to give me some. And she was so scared. She didn't know what to do. And once I grabbed the money, I grabbed my clothes. She goes by the front door asking me not to go. Please don't go, please don't go. And I just pushed her out of the way. And when I pushed her out of the way, like I literally pushed my frail old mother, into a closet just to get past her. And as I'm walking past her, she's doesn't say anything, and I'm just walking towards, my friend who's just down the road. And I hear this whimper, this really, really faint, like cry that's really quiet. And this cry, it was so impactful because it made me just really snap out of it.
Yeah.
It's weird to say that though, because you think, well, how am I snapping out of like a little whimper and a cry when I've heard hundreds of people over like a 6-year drug-induced rampage bawl their eyes out, scream at me, beg me. But I think it was because that was the sound, in my opinion, of the last person to give up on me.
Yeah.
Because that was a cry. That was a whimper of desperation. That was like a cry of, um,
I
I
don't know
felt
what
like
else to do, kind of thing. I'm done here. I
absolutely.
can't help you.
It was so powerful, and I heard that, and it really just made me just stop and like, what the heck am I doing? And I kind of just looked down at my hands and just realized it was black and blue, and from the night before, and I started to reflect on like just everything that I've been doing. But I was too scared to look back on my mom, too much of a coward to see her face. And I just kept walking to my friend's car. But I got to my friend's car and I stopped and I said, bro, I really need help. And he says, yeah. And a couple of weeks later, I checked myself into a rehab center. But it's powerful when you realize, because I felt like that's what it is. People are like, how do you get sober? It's like, because I literally lost everything at that point.
Yeah.
And the one person that you never think you'd lose is your mother. But when your mother has that sound of desperation coming out of her, it's not like I hate you anymore. It's just kind of like there's nothing else left. Like that really just hit me like a ton of bricks, and it woke me up. And yeah, rehab was the best thing that's ever happened. Because that was March 23rd, 2012, about 8 years ago. So,
There you go. Very good.
so I'm on my ninth. I'm getting to my ninth year soon. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
Um, so through all of this, obviously, you know, family has been really important, and your mother has obviously been really significant in, you know, helping you turn that corner to actually get yourself clean. Sort of through that time, how important was your actual faith? And, you know, is it your faith that sort of got you through rehab and sort of to where you are now, or you were not sort of even in that headspace when you're actually sort of going rehab? Rehab was just about trying to get clean and to start again.
Um, no, the faith was like the fundamental pillar for myself
Okay.
of getting sober, without a doubt, because it gives me this unexplainable joy
Yep.
and extremely powerful confidence into continuing forward in a sober and more pure way. Um, it's not about like, oh, do this is the only way through salvation. None of that stuff. It's more so we are spiritual beings.
Yep.
If you feed the spirit with things that are conducive and positive, you will be able to elevate not only yourself but those around you,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. Even when times get hard, when you have a sense of spiritual joy, or you have like this attention towards the spirit, no matter how sad and how rough and how tough things get, there is always motivation to continue, you know? And so for me, I think of getting high and drugs and all that, something that's gonna decrease that drive to wanting to lift my spirit up. Because then the only way to really get to my spirit is through like positive and conducive things, so service for me is something to feed my spirit, because it's an unexplainable joy, it's an unexplainable fulfillment that I can get when I'm serving my community, and that's when it's unexplainable. That's when I refer to it as like a spiritual happiness. Meditation and praying and doing everything that I can, will help my spiritual growth. But even taking care of my body physically, eating the right food, is a way that it's going to allow me to be able to fulfill my spiritual happiness. Because then if I'm feeling better, it's going to make me want to do better. And
Yeah.
then if I'm able to do better, that's going to feed my spirit. And that's something that I've realized, it's not about like going around forcing people to be a certain type of way. At the end of the day, everyone has an idea of how they can feed their spirit. And I'm not saying the only way you can feed your spirit is through, the Baha'i faith. People have different ways to do it. I just find that the Baha'i faith's really helped me understand that. And, I think people who, let's just say, may not be religious, by all means, as long as you're trying to feed your spirit in every way, shape, or form, I commend that. And I feel closer to people like that than people who say they're just religious but have no spirit. You get what I'm saying?
Yep. Totally.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, for me, it's definitely been the fundamental pillar, but also because the Baha'i faith says the best way to serve, or sorry, the best way to show love to God is to serve His creatures. So
Right.
for me to like, really want to just thank God and like serve God, the best way to do is serve you guys, but not under like I'm doing this because I have to. It's because like I genuinely want to. You do stuff out of love because you want to, not because you have to,
Yep.
right? Because
Yeah.
if it's out of
You're not
have,
expecting anything in return. You're just doing that because
exactly.
it's,
Well,
yeah.
I've gotten everything that I need. I've gotten a second, not a second chance. I would say like 100th chance at life. I've been
Yeah.
given so many chances, but I've also gotten, like my sobriety. I've got my family back. I've got friends. I've got, the opportunity to share my story. I've got a craft that I love, and so that's why I'm using what I do into serving humanity every chance that I get, because it's just my extreme amount of love that I have for a higher power, and so by serving humanity, it's just the way I can do it.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
yeah.
And so a haircut is such a simple thing. And I'm desperate for a haircut because I've been in lockdown for too long. But it goes such a long way to make people feel so much better about themselves. I think I probably have a far greater appreciation of that now. I've been in lockdown, I can't get my hair cut. But why a barber? What made you choose that path?
It's interesting, eh? Like I just felt like I just I kind of fell into it more so than anything else. I grew up just, doing my friends' sideburns and our little peach fuzz mustaches and our little stubble beards when we were in high school. And I never really had experience doing it for girls. I grew up with brothers. My mom was more manly than my father, myself, and my two brothers. She was a queen. She was like a warrior queen. So she really held the fort down. So I never really was around more of like the blow waving and the curling and the coloring kind of aspect. That never really was something that I got to experience. For me, it was more clippers and razors, and that's just something that I kind of gravitated towards. And I think over the years, I always just appreciated that, and I would just do it in high school before I actually started cutting hair properly. I would always just cut hair for my friends and family, and every time they tell me to cut hair, professionally, I'd always get insulted, thinking, "You guys don't think I can be like you, academics, or etc., etc." But I used to just do it for fun. But then in rehab is when I really decided this is what I want to do, because I really did enjoy cutting hair, and I'm not going to be ashamed of doing it. So um, I just basically went off what I knew, and barbering was the closest thing to what I knew. It was clippers and razors and stuff like that. And I love the craft. Even now, like I look at color and blow waves and stuff, and it still freaks me out. I feel like I've got only like one hand when I try to do it. I just don't have the attention to that industry, or like the attention to detail in regards to that industry. It seems I love it and I wish I was better at it, but I guess when something's just fitting into who you are, I'm not trying to actually be someone I'm not anymore. I'm just really trying to embrace who I am, and what my personality is more driven towards, so I don't lose myself again. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it literally just fell in. This was my purpose.
Yeah, so you do a lot of work in terms of serving the homeless and people that were due to go to court, in terms of needing a trim and a haircut or whatever. And now you're also starting to infiltrate into the prison system and supporting and have a program running for prisoners
That's
that
great.
are trying to reform themselves. Um, do you ever sort of feel when you're in those environments, do you ever sort of feel unsafe or threatened in any way? Like,
No,
yeah,
not
right.
at all. Not at all. Because I mean, like, I think once again, like, the kings and queens that we really are, right? Remember, I was telling you, at our natural self, you can do whatever crime, you can do whatever issue, you can be stuck in the worst place ever, but your inner self, your true sense of self, I think there's always beauty and there's always love. Even if it's just a drop of it, there's still love. And I think that when like someone tries to bring that love out by giving you love, genuine love, you know, um, you just get that love back, that you receive it back. And for me, I try to use the word love and replace it with light, because I try to
Yeah.
give light, and if I can give light to people, then people can actually be attracted to that light, which just in turn just kind of emits light back and reflects that light back. Sorry. And so, in the prison system, I've never felt, I feel safer than I would anywhere else. The
Yeah.
guys there just got my back. Yeah, hell yeah. Like you're doing something for them. I'm not getting paid. And they know that. They
And
know.
and how many have actually gone through the program
Well,
at the
we had a
Barber
program
prison?
of six, and
Yeah.
we just finished our first program. Obviously, this beloved virus that has affected the world has
Yeah.
taken stuff on a little bit of a back burner, but it's pretty cool because the warden down in the prisons that we're at has asked me to go to the neighboring prison, um, and actually work with the young offenders, so from the 18 to 25-year-olds, and it's a little bit more of like a serious prison. Um, uh, which is cool because to think that through the grapevine things have been kind of on the positive is such a beautiful sign.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's funny when you're saying, do I ever feel threatened? Two of the inmates that I was teaching, they were both convicted of murder, but they were my two best students. So when people come to me and like, yo, I don't believe in that love and light thing, they're like, come on, man. These two people have killed,
Yeah.
and they were the nicest and purest and most genuine and caring students I've ever had in any class, whether they were in the prison system or whether they were paid students who I was teaching outside of prison.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not saying what they've done is good and they're the best people, but I'm saying when you're showing a little bit of love and genuine authenticity, it's like it's pretty it's pretty powerful to see what I think reactions you can get back. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I kind of
sometimes people just need to see that somebody actually cares and,
that's
offers
what I'm
them
getting
the,
at. Yeah,
yeah, right?
that's
The
what I'm getting.
openness of your heart and, yeah, caring and just being completely genuine and honest in who you are and how you are with them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But that, like, at the same time, I also don't want to like not necessarily like forgive because that's not up to me to decide. But I don't want to like say, oh, like what they've done, it was what they've done. They've taken someone's life, right? And it's
Yeah,
horrible. They've ruined a lot of lives. But what I'm saying is, even people who have done that, there is still a level of purity and of good in them that if you were to show them a little bit of love and decency and respect, you know I mean, obviously there are cases where people are just severely psychologically and mentally unstable, but I mean those guys wouldn't be in the class anyways. I think the prison system and
yeah,
the higher ups kind of have a little bit of investigation going on, so there's a lot of research going on to who can join the prison system, who can join the classes. But those guys who are severely troubled wouldn't be, exposed to programs anyways, regardless of whether it's the barbering program or any form of program. I think those guys are severely locked up, right? So, um, yeah.
yeah. Okay. I'm also just really mindful. Our time is almost coming to an end.
Thank
I
you.
have sort of two sort of final questions for you, Nasir. So the first one is, in terms of, people figuring out their destiny, what would your advice be for someone who's lost and sort of is on that precipice, of just about
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get down the right path, the wrong path? What would your advice be to them?
Well, I mean, this goes back to what I believe is the purpose of life, right? And
Yeah,
for me, the purpose of life is two-part. First part is to recognize and fulfill your destiny. And by fulfilling and recognizing your destiny is to recognize what you're good at. So once you recognize what you're good at, whether it's something you've acquired at birth, like a special talent, or something you've studied over the years and you've been able to gain the knowledge for, regardless, at this point, you recognize what you're good at. And once you recognize what you're good at, that's you're finally figuring out and fulfilling your destiny, right? You just all it's all about recognizing. Second part of this purpose of life is to use that talent, use that knowledge, use that skill into benefiting people around you.
yeah,
So we've been given a special talent, not by mistake. You've been given this desire, this passion for a reason, right?
mm,
And once you use that into benefiting those around you, what ends up happening is you wake up in the morning and you are going to do what you're good at to helping others. It just gives your life purpose, right? And you just feel fulfilled. And when something gives your life purpose, if you flip those words around, it is the purpose of life.
yeah,
you know so we confuse purpose of life and we go on extreme 10-day retreats and we try to figure stuff out and buy books, but it's so simple. Just live a life of purpose, man. Recognize what you're good at, fulfill your destiny, and use that into benefiting others. So simple. Don't complicate it. And that's what I
yeah,
do. I cut hair and I use that to benefit mankind. Simple as that.
yeah.
So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So, final question for today. With COVID-19, tell me something that you just won't take for granted again, given everything that's going on in the world at the moment.
Seeing my parents, to be honest. Yeah, definitely. That's
Nice.
the one thing. Like I think the fact that I can't go home and see my mom, she's got arthritis and she had vertigo both in the same time and she had to be in lockdown. She couldn't leave her house. It just killed me inside. I just want to be there for her, but I can't. So I guess you really, really, value and cherish those close relationships to you, and make that effort to really um, see them and not think you're too busy. Because when there's love, there's always time, right? And right now, there's so much love and there's always time, but there's just no way to get there.
Yeah,
So I think that's something that's really, really getting to me, and that's the one thing that I really want to do is just kind of be there for both my parents, but my family in general. Like that's something that's holding me back a lot, and it's crazy to think that just like that. So any opportunity I'm going to get in the future, I'm going to try to not only serve mankind, but my family as well.
yeah, beautiful.
'Cause in the past, for like 8 years since I've been here, I've only really seen my parents. I've gone home twice because I was so busy trying to do all this.
Yeah,
It's crazy to think now.
yeah.
My
It really,
family's part of mankind after all. I shouldn't separate the two.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nasir, thank you so much for your time today. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure talking to you. I could actually sit here and talk to you all day, but
Thank you.
yeah, incredibly. Yeah, thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your story. It's amazing and completely and utterly resonates with me and no doubt with our community. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Appreciate you. Have a good day, okay?
Yeah, you too. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.